أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu and welcome to our class today. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So for short stretch, the first thing and the first stroke that you looked at was the stroke of Fatha. You can see that Fatha is a slanted stroke, as you can see in the green box, and it sits above a letter. So if you imagine this line over here to be a letter, the stroke of Fatha sits above the letter. Okay. And any letter that carries the stroke of Fatha, the sound of that letter will last for one count. So it's a very short amount of time that we have to spend on that. So we have to be really careful that we're not elongating more than that. So only one count. And any letter that carries a Fatha is called a maftuh letter. So as you can see over here, we have the letter ba. It has a fatha on it. So that makes this letter ba a maftuh letter. So that's another way of referring to this letter. We would say that this is a maftuh letter. So that is only when a letter carries the stroke of fatha. Okay, so if we compare that to long stretch, we find the stroke of vertical fatha. Okay, so the aim of this exercise is to compare short stretch and long stretch. Okay, so if we compare short stretch to long stretch and fatha, then we find ourselves looking at the stroke of vertical fatha. Now, vertical fatha is a vertical stroke, which is evident through the name as well, vertical. And you can see that just like fatha, vertical fatha also sits above a letter. Okay, so you can see that the stroke of fatha has been turned vertically, and this is why it gets the name of vertical fatha. And like I said, it sits above a letter, just like fatha. Now, unlike fatha, which is pronounced for one count, vertical fatha is pronounced for two counts. Okay, so that's really important to note the difference in timing. But similar to fatha, any letter carrying a vertical fatha is also called a maftuh letter. So any letter carrying a fatha or a vertical fatha is called a maftuh letter. So in this case, the ba has a vertical fatha, but it will still be called a maftuh letter, just like it was over here when it carried a fatha. Okay, so quickly to recap, we've looked at short stretch, which was the rule of, we looked at the rule of fatha, and then we've looked at long stretch, where we've looked at the stroke of vertical fatha, and we've understood that both of these letters have the same, both of these strokes has the same sound. However, there is a big difference in the timing. So whereas fatha is pronounced for one count, long stretch, vertical fatha is pronounced for two counts. So we need to be really careful that we are going according to this rule and applying the correct amount of time according to the stroke that is on the letter. Okay, so both have similar sounds, the same sound, but the timing is different. One is for one count and the other is for two counts. Okay, so let's move on to the second type of short stretch. The second type of short stretch is the stroke of Kasra. Just like Fatha, Kasra is also a slanted stroke. It sits below a letter. You can see in this box over here that we have a slanted stroke and it sits below the letter. So that's why we know that it is a Kasra. And this also, any letter carrying the stroke of Kasra also will be pronounced for one count. Any letter carrying a Kasra is known as maksur. Maksur. Okay, so this ba over here has a kasra, so it will be called a maksur letter. So if you don't know this already, it's really important that you start learning these terminologies so that inshallah, when we refer to them, you are able to understand them and it's not confusing. Okay, so this is a maksur letter. Okay, let's compare that to long stretch. Now in long stretch, we have vertical kasra. And vertical kasra is a vertical stroke. Okay, you can see that the stroke of kasra has been turned vertically, and you can see that it looks like this now. And again, it sits below the letter, and this is a vertical kasra. And a vertical kasra lasts for 2 counts. The sound of a vertical kasra will last for 2 counts. Okay, and again, any letter carrying a vertical kasra is called a maksur letter. So that doesn't change. Any letter carrying a kasra or a vertical kasra is known as maksur. So between short and long stretch, so between kasra and vertical kasra, we make the same sound. Okay, the same sound is made. So for example, over here, the ba with the kasra will be pronounced as B, and the ba with the vertical kasra will be pronounced as B, B. Okay, so you can tell that it's the same sound that we make, but the difference is in the timing. So for the kasra, I only pronounced it for 1 count, and for the vertical kasra, I pronounced it for 2 counts. So that is the difference that needs to be noted and applied. Okay, let's have a look at the third and final type of short stretch. So the final one is the stroke of Dhamma. Now Dhamma, as you can see over here, it's a shaped stroke. Okay, it has this rounded section at the top and then a flick at the bottom. And this also sits above a letter. And any letter carrying the stroke of Dhamma will be pronounced for 1 count. And also, any letter carrying a Dhamma is known as madmoom. Madmoom. Okay, so this letter ba, because it carries a Dhamma, it is now known as madmoom. So we've been seeing the examples and we've been using the same letter. So we've been using the letter ba to illustrate what the strokes look like, but you can see that depending on what the stroke is on the letter, the type of letter changes. So the name for the letter changes. So this is known as a madmoom letter now. Okay. And for long stretch, we have inverted Dhamma. And inverted Dhamma looks like this. It's an inverted stroke. So it looks like the stroke of Dhamma has been turned on its head, so turned upside down. And we have the rounded section now at the top, at the bottom, sorry, and the flick is at the top. Okay, so it's just been turned upside down. And inverted Dhamma also sits above a letter. And the timing for this stroke is 2 counts. And again, any letter carrying an inverted Dhamma is known as madmoom. Madmoom. So to pronounce this will be bu, and to pronounce this, so with the inverted Dhamma will be bu. So I'm just doubling the time that I spent on the Dhamma, and that would be spent on the inverted Dhamma. Okay, so for Dhamma and inverted Dhamma is the same sound, however, the timing is different. The timing is 1 count for Dhamma and 2 counts for inverted Dhamma. So that is the key thing that we are trying to highlight in this revision session, that the sound is same, but the timing is different. So it's really important that we note that. Okay, so this is on this page, you can see all the rules that we have covered so far all together, and we can see Fatha, vertical Fatha, Kasra, vertical Kasra, Dhamma, and inverted Dhamma. So many of these, so both of these will have the same sound, but different timing. Both of these will have the same sound, but different timing. And both of these have the same sound, but different timing.